just under 10 minutes. Sorry, I'll say that again because I turn my microphone on now. So good morning, everyone. We're going to be starting in about 6 minutes. Perhaps in the chat box, you could just let me know what country you're logging in from. It'd just be interesting to see where in the world people are this morning. So I'm in Tring in Hertfordshire, which is just outside of London in the UK. It's got India, Pakistan, Turkey, London, England. Hi, Louise. Quite a few in India. It's great to have you with us. I'm from China. Well, welcome. Windsor in England, Cheshire, Cambridge, Coventry. So it seems to be England and India at the moment, and Turkey. Amazing. Wales, welcome. Oh, hi, Victoria. Sunny Scotland. So the whole of the UK represented, and most of India by the looks of it. That's great. So just a few more minutes before we get started. So keep letting me know where you're logging in from. So India's definitely most heavily represented this morning. It should change this afternoon with the time zones. We're expecting different parts of the world to log in at 3 p.m. Got Shireen from Derby in the UK. Hope everyone's adjusted to the clocks changing in the UK. Just had to change my clock in my office. It was an hour behind. I'm just going to very quickly just take a picture and tweet it just so that we can try and get a few more people to log on. Take a picture of my screen. So we've got about 150 people almost, and the numbers keep going up, which is great. We're starting about 1 or 2 minutes time. So welcome to everyone from India and across the UK. It's great to have you this morning. We'll just wait for a few more people to log in and then we'll get started. Morning, Hazel. So Dr. Hazel Harrison's joining us, who presented part 1. Thank you for joining me, Hazel. Okay, so I think I'm going to get started because it's 8 a.m. UK time. So thank you to everyone that has joined me this morning. Got over 175 people attending at the moment and the numbers keep climbing, which is great. So the presentation this morning is part 2, supporting the mental health and emotional well-being of primary age children. So this is following on from Dr. Hazel Harrison's presentation on Thursday last week, which was focusing on part 1. And I'll give a quick recap in a minute on that. This is primarily aimed at teachers. However, because it's an open webinar, we understand that many teachers are parents as well, and also that this is a topic that is really important to parents at this time, this difficult time. So Hazel and I've tried to keep the material broad so it appeals to everyone. So let's start this morning. Just some kind of housekeeping before we start. You will get a certificate of attendance. So the webinar is certified, and you'll get an email after attending the event with your personalized certificate. So that's great for CPD kind of evidence. questions, leave questions in the chat box on the bottom right of the screen, and we'll address some of the questions at the end. So I'll leave about 10-15 minutes at the end for questions. The chat box is moderated. And 3, we are recording this session, and it can be accessed again at a later time. And if you missed part 1 with Hazel, then you'll be able to watch that as well as attending this one now. So just a quick introduction about who I am. So I'm Adrian Bethune. I'm a qualified and still practicing primary school teacher. This is my 10th year of teaching. In 2018, I wrote and published a book called Wellbeing in the Primary Classroom. And really, the last 10 years of my teaching practice and what my book is about is how we can kind of foster positive mental health, good well-being among the children that we teach, and also how we model it as teachers, using really what's sometimes called the science of happiness, the science of well-being. So, typically, historically, psychology has looked at mental illness, so people suffering with stress, anxiety, depression, but a kind of new field of psychology, sometimes called positive psychology, looked at what contributes to a flourishing life, what studies, what research is out there that shows people how to lead a kind of good life with positive health, mental health, physical health. And so that's what my book's about. That's what this talk is about as well. And I'm also the education policy co-lead at the Mindfulness Initiative, which is a policy think tank in the UK. So this talk is using a wellbeing theory called PERMA. And Hazel shared an outline of PERMA in part 1. And this wellbeing theory was developed by Professor Martin Seligman, who's a professor at University of Pennsylvania. And essentially, it's a model that Hazel and I both like because it is easy to understand, it's really applicable, that it's really easy to remember as well. And if you remember PERMA, then it's easy to try and weave some of PERMA into your kind of daily habits and routines to kind of help boost your well-being. So just to give a very quick recap of what Hazel talked about on Thursday, she focused on the P of PERMA, which is about positive emotions. She shared the research of Professor Barbara Fredrickson, who's an expert in positive emotions, and mentioned her broaden and build theory, which is essentially when we experience more positive emotions. And positive emotions, by the way, is a kind of whole spectrum. It's not just about joy and happiness. Positive emotions can be about calmness and serenity. Positive emotions can be about experiencing awe. So if you've ever been to a natural setting, maybe a waterfall, an amazing woodland area, and you're just kind of in awe of the scenery, that can be a positive emotion. So there's a whole range. And the broaden and build theory of Barbara Fredrickson showed that when we experience more positive emotions more regularly, we tend to feel better, we tend to do better, we tend to kind of broaden our horizons, we see more options open to us, so we become more flexible in our thinking, we become better at problem solving, and we also build our social, mental, physical capital. So that's positive emotions. Oh, and Hazel also made the very important point that when we're talking about well-being and indeed positive emotions, that isn't to say that negative emotions, one, aren't important, because they are. Negative emotions such as fear or worry can help keep us safe in times of danger. So right now, we're in the UK, we're in lockdown because of the coronavirus, which is obviously a global pandemic. If we didn't have a certain amount of fear, we might ignore the lockdown guidance and advice. We might not wash our hands as much. We might just go out to the shops whenever we felt like it. But actually that fear is important because it means we wash our hands regularly because we don't want to spread any viruses. It also means we observe the new laws about lockdown because we don't want, one, to get into trouble, or two, to catch or spread the virus. So negative emotions serve a very important purpose. I think one of the keys to well-being, though, is learning how to manage and learn how to accept and be with the whole spectrum of emotions. So even really uncomfortable ones, if we can learn how to be with them skillfully, then we don't become overwhelmed by them, which is a really important facet of well-being. Hazel also talked about the E, engagement. So this is when we are fully engrossed in an activity, where we might experience what psychologist Csikszentmihalyi called flow, which you're fully absorbed in something for its own sake. You're not doing it for fame or money. You're just doing it for the pure kind of enjoyment of that activity. A key sign that you're in flow is that time rushes by. So an hour feels like 10 minutes. You also lose kind of sense of yourself. So you might not notice that you're really hungry. You might not notice that you haven't been to the toilet for a couple of hours because you're just fully engrossed in what you're doing. And the important thing with this is that when you're fully absorbed in something, your mental focus is on that task, that activity, which means you don't have the capacity to be worried, to be anxious, to be stressed, because you're fully focused. And also Hazel mentioned that mindfulness can be a good route to experiencing engagement. Relationships I'll cover on this session, so we won't talk about that now. Hazel also talked about meaning, which is about, Seligman describes it as feeling part of something bigger than just yourself, that we are part of either a community, a society. And actually, one really positive thing that I think about this global pandemic is that we are really acutely realizing that we are part of this global humanity, that this virus is affecting everybody, and it's bringing us closer together, I think, as a global community, so that we work together to protect everyone, not just some people, but everyone, because when we look after everyone during this time, then everyone gets the benefit. I'll also be looking at achievement, or sometimes called accomplishment, and also something Hazel didn't show in her model, which I'm going to be talking about today, is this sometimes called V for vitality, or sometimes called Perma Plus. And the plus bit, the additional bit, is about health, really. It's about nutrition, eating well. It's about sleeping well. And it's about regular physical activity, because when we look after our physical health, obviously we know that healthy body means healthy mind. So I'm going to crack on now and talk about the first part of my section, which is the R, which is relationships. So positive relationships. Hazel mentioned this in part one, that positive relationships, all of the research on the science of well-being pretty much shows that one of the strongest predictors of a happy life, of a life that can be deemed to be flourishing, is strong personal relationships. That with an absence of strong personal relationships, it's very hard to lead a happy life, because they are the absolute bedrock. There's really good research that shows that actually when we have strong personal relationships, that can actually help delay mental and physical decline in older age. So older people that have good, strong personal relationships tend to be healthier, they tend to be happier, they tend to suffer less from mental decline like Alzheimer's, problems like that in older age. And also the research shows that our strong personal relationships are more important than our genes, our social class, or even our levels of intelligence in terms of well-being. So they are massively important. And so really, given that they're so important on well-being, what I wanted to kind of focus on is how can we ensure that our relationships stay strong, even in this time where we're kind of having to stay away from each other. So that's kind of what I want to explore in this first part. And given that this webinar is largely aimed at teachers, but this also applies to families as well, I really wanted to share this concept of tribal classrooms. So this concept, tribal classrooms, the phrase comes from Professor Louis Cozolino, American professor. And essentially what he says is that human beings are an innately tribal species, and that for the majority of the last 100,000 years or more, modern humans have lived in hunter-gatherer tribes. And it's only really in the last 5,000 years or so that modern humans have moved from living in tribal-based societies to agricultural-based societies to the industrial-based societies that most of us live in now. And Cozolino and other experts say that although 5,000 years seems like a huge amount of time, in terms of biological evolution, it's the blink of an eye. And Cozolino says that we are a deeply tribal species, and that we learn best, we do best, we feel best when we feel like we're part of a tribe. He actually says we're happiest and learn the best when we feel connected and protected. So connected to others, so we've got those strong personal relationships in the classroom with our teachers, with our classmates, and also the wider school community. And also that we feel protected, that it's really important that children feel safe in terms of learning and well-being, because when they feel safe, then they feel able to explore, they feel able to take risks. And exploration and taking risks are a massive part of the learning process. You know, if we weren't willing to take risks, we might be afraid to put our hand up and answer a question. We might be afraid to give an answer to a question because we might worry about, you know, getting the answer wrong and looking a bit stupid in front of our friends. But actually, feeling connected and protected allows us to take those risks and feel safe and explore and learn. And there's really good research that shows a sense of belonging, which is what all tribal classrooms is all about, feeling like you belong to a group. It's fundamental to well-being, and it's also fundamental to learning. We learn better when we feel like we're part of a team, and it's because learning is predominantly a social process. We learn in relation to other people. So how can we kind of create this tribal classroom atmosphere when, for many of us, our children are not in school at the moment, they're at home? And so I wanted to share kind of some of these ideas, how we can foster positive relationships in this kind of virtual tribal classroom. So something I saw a head teacher and other schools do in the UK is set up these virtual assemblies. So the lady in this picture here is a head teacher called Tammy Prince, a head teacher at Newlands Primary School in the UK. And what she's done is she records 2 assemblies a week for the children and families in her school, and she puts them on YouTube, and they're celebration assemblies. So the school might have set a kind of home learning challenge, and then parents and families are asked to kind of take photos of children kind of celebrating their work. And then Tammy Prince does an assembly online. She shares some of the photos. She might read a story, but it's a lovely way for that school community, who are all kind of separated at the moment, to log on and feel like they're still part of Newlands Primary School, still part of that tribal classroom atmosphere. So I think that's a lovely idea that schools can do in this current situation. Also, it just made me think of other ideas. What about a virtual show and tell? So show and tell in primary schools is still part, you know, quite a key feature. Still happens in my primary school. So children, you know, share interesting things. It might be a book that they've read. It might be an amazing leaf that they found, or a bug that they discovered in their garden. And they can literally just record themselves like I'm speaking now. They can share their whatever it is they wanted to share. It might be a book that they've read, and they can kind of talk for a minute or so about their book. And they could upload that to YouTube or another platform. And maybe that can be a way that classrooms can kind of feel like they're coming together, and people can still see their classmates and have that sense of connection. Another thing is reading a story online. So another teacher in the UK, Colin Grimes, has been set up a Facebook live group, and the families in his school have the login details, and he's literally there reading a story to his kids, a picture book, and he's reading it just as if he was in the classroom. And so the children in his class feel that sense of connection. They see their teacher, who they kind of love and adore, and he's still able to share, you know, wonderful stories with his class. So they feel that sense of connection, which I think is really important. Other things that we can do as teachers and schools is phone calls to check in, because not every family has access to broadband and Facebook and YouTube and all those kind of things. So if teachers and schools can just every so often just call at a family, just check in, just speak to their pupils. Again, it's that checking in, it's making sure that pupils feel connected to their teachers still, and also protected. So a teacher, you know, knowing that your teacher's going to call on Thursday and just have a quick chat with you, you still feel that sense of protection, that they're looking out for you, even though you're not physically in the same building. And also at the end, so that rainbow challenge, I think this started in Italy, where children are painting kind of beautiful pictures of rainbows and then putting them up in their windows in their houses. I think this was something that Newlands Primary School did. They set that as a homework challenge. and that was part of their show and tell. And I think that's such a lovely thing to do, because I know when my family have done their kind of daily exercise, our permitted exercise, we've gone round the block near where we live, and we've just been spotting rainbows in people's front windows. So it's a bit of a rainbow challenge, and it's something that schools can do together as a kind of collective activity. So that's one way that we can kind of create these virtual tribal classrooms. Another thing that's really important for fostering positive relationships is laughter. Now, laughter feels maybe potentially kind of frivolous, and maybe something that we might feel that we shouldn't be doing given the kind of seriousness of the situation around the world at the moment. However, I think actually now is the time to find laughter in our situation. It's more important than ever before. And that's partly because of what psychologists and scientists have discovered about laughter. So one of the primary purposes of laughter is that it helps build rapport. It helps us feel connected to other people. Studies show that we're 30 times more likely to laugh in the company of others than when we're by ourselves. So laughter is a very social thing. The other thing is it's contagious. So even if we haven't heard a joke, if we see other people laughing, then we're likely to laugh ourselves. So it has this kind of emotional contagion effect. Really importantly, studies show that laughter boosts our immune system. And it's so important at the moment with this virus going around that we do as much as we can to stay healthy, to protect and look after our immune system. And what studies show is that just after watching a funny TV program, levels of natural killer cells, so these are the cells in our bodies that kill tumorous and cancerous cells, those levels go up. So our immune system is strengthened, our cardiovascular system is strengthened from laughter. The other thing that happens when we're laughing is our stress levels come right down. It's impossible to feel stressed whilst we're laughing. And that's partly because our bodies get flooded with happy hormones like endorphins and dopamine when we're laughing. And these, again, protect our bodies and they make us feel good and they lower our stress levels. Again, this time it's really important to manage our stress levels because stress can deplete our immune system. And also, really importantly, is that laughter and humour can give us a sense of control over the uncontrollable. So many of us around the world are experiencing a lack of control right now. So in the UK, we are told, you cannot leave your home. You can only leave your home once a day for exercise and if you desperately need some food. So that's massively restricting the control, our freedom at the moment. So finding moments to laugh, finding moments to share humour gives us a sense of control where there is a lack of control. So I think it's really, really important to do that now. So again, in your virtual classrooms, are you able to share jokes with your class? There are plenty of kind of funny poems. There's an English poet and writer called Michael Rosen, and on YouTube, if you Google Michael Rosen, he's got some wonderful performance poetry. One called No Breathing in Class. There's one called Chocolate Cake, and they're 5 or 6 minutes, and you will be laughing if you watch those clips. So find funny things to share that's appropriate, obviously, to share with your children, to share with your families at home, and get laughing, get those endorphins, those happy hormones going. So another way to foster positive relationships. Sorry, my slides have gone a bit weird. Let me just find them. Here we go. Is this thing called savouring. So savouring is when we relive a happy experience and we stay with that experience for a bit longer. And there's good research that shows that it improves our well-being. So an expert in this area is Dr. Rick Hanson, who's written a brilliant book called Hardwiring Happiness. And he calls it taking in the good. And essentially what he says is that, our brains are wired to have this negativity bias, which is an evolutionary hangover, because essentially our hunter-gatherer ancestors that were out looking for food, searching for things to eat, if they were able to spot dangers quickly and they could avoid them, they survived and passed on their genes to us. Whereas maybe our more optimistic ancestors that might have stopped to admire a beautiful view or smell a flower potentially would have been gobbled up by a predator. So our brains over millions of years have been primed to always be on the lookout for dangers, for threats, for things to avoid. What this means is our minds naturally dwell on the negative because it's a survival mechanism. And what Dr. Rick Hanson says is that we need to rewire that negativity bias by taking in the good. And when we experience good experiences, when we're laughing, for example, with our family, if we really kind of savor those moments, if we really let them fill us up, what happens is we wire more neural pathways into the positive areas of our brain, the areas of our brain that process positive emotions. And Rick Hanson's really keen to point out that this isn't putting a rose-tinted glasses on everything and trying to make out everything's positive. It's literally about trying to level the playing field, because at the moment we have this negativity bias where we notice negative things more, we're likely to remember negative things more. But when we savor things, we notice good things and we savor them, we actually just see the world more realistically, which I think is really important right now. So something that we can do, really simple, and it's something that my family's been doing, is we've just been digging out old photos. So I've got, thousands of photos on my phone and also on my laptop of really happy times for my family, previous holidays. And this picture on the slide is from last summer. And it's just my family and I in our local town in Tring where we live. And there was a kind of summer festival. And it's just a photo from a happy time. And we, are going through old photos, my wife and I and my two boys. And we're just saying, do you remember when we did that? And we're just reliving these happy times. And that kind of takes our mindset out of this fear about, what's going to happen? How long are we going to be stuck indoors? And this negativity kind of bias. And it's just allowing us to dwell on happy times from the past, because just because they're in the past doesn't mean that we have to forget about them. So this is something that schools can do. Schools often take lots of photos of school trips, of work that children have done in class. And you could, schools can share these on their websites. Maybe you could have a new gallery just to remember some happy times from school, because there will be a time in the future when we're all back in school together. So why not kind of create that sense of connection now by reliving some of those happy times when we were at school? And again, families, dig out those old photo albums, get your phones out, go back through your photos and just remember those happy times from the past. One last thing on positive relationships before I move on is this idea of gratitude. Hazel mentioned this in part one, that gratitude is really important for our well-being. That people that experience or practice gratitude regularly show stronger immune systems, show greater positive emotions, so greater resilience. They tend to kind of withstand difficult experiences more readily. But this gratitude exercise that I'm talking about is slightly different. This is about, so Hazel talked about writing down a gratitude kind of journal, keeping a gratitude journal. So at the end of every day, maybe writing down 3 things that have gone well for you and why they've gone well. Small things, which is linked to savoring as well. This gratitude practice is about strengthening our relationships. So thinking about the people in our lives that we are grateful for. And what studies show is that when we express thanks and appreciation to people in our lives, it strengthens those relationships. There's a practice called the gratitude letter, again developed by Professor Martin Seligman, which is basically people write a letter. People think about someone really important in their lives and they write them a letter and just explain why that person is really important in their lives, what they appreciate about them, how they contribute to their happiness and well-being. And then they give that letter to the person. They either post it or they hand deliver it. So I was thinking, how can we kind of tap into that and get children and families to express gratitude right now? An idea I did have, and I'm slightly changing it, is could we write and send a gratitude postcard to friends and family? The reason I'm revising that is I read recently that potentially post can spread germs and viruses. So I'm revising it to, can we write and send a gratitude text message on our phone, or can we write and send a gratitude email? So it's completely safe that way. It's purely digital. But basically, if we get our children to think about friends or family members that they currently can't see, and just reflect on what is it about that person that they really value. What is it? Is it their laughter? Is it their ability to listen to you when you're kind of upset about something? Is it the ability to cheer you up? Is it the fun you have with them? Whatever it is, just write a short note, an email, a text message, and then just send it to that person. And just, get into that habit of gratitude, of expressing our appreciation to the important people of our lives, because currently we're separated from them. That doesn't mean that we can't still feel connected by expressing our thanks and our gratitude and our appreciation to them. So those are some of the ways that we can continue to foster positive relationships, because they are so important to our happiness and well-being. Moving on to accomplishment now. So it's sometimes called accomplishment, sometimes achievement. Essentially, this is about Seligman's research shows that when we achieve something, when we complete tasks for their own sake, not for fame, not for money, not for plaudits, then it's just inherently good for our well-being. That we are a species, human beings want to produce, we want to create, we want to achieve things, and that contributes fundamentally to our sense of self and also our well-being. So just a kind of little bit about our brains. Our brains, we have these amazing brains, and they want to be challenged and they want to be stimulated, meaning they want to solve problems, they want to think, they want to create. And we feel good when our brains are challenged and stimulated in the right way. Something I wanted to talk about very briefly was this concept of growth mindset. It's a theory developed by Carol Dweck, which is essentially that everybody can improve their intelligence and abilities with the right effort, support, guidance, and strategies. So the opposite of a growth mindset is, I believe I can improve at something if I put my mind to it, if I practice, if I learn from my mistakes. A fixed mindset is a belief that you're either good at something or not good at something. So lots of people say, oh, I'm just not a maths person. And they think they're either good at maths or they're not good at maths. And that's a fixed mindset, because everybody can improve their ability at maths. So there's something that we can do to foster more of a growth mindset. And we're definitely going to need, I think, a growth mindset to help us get through these next few weeks and months around the world. And something really important to this is knowing how our brains learn. So this concept, neurons that fire together, wire together, essentially in terms of neuroplasticity, we have on average about 100 billion neurons in our brains. And these are tiny cells that send messages to one another when we're thinking about something, when we're learning something new. And every time, let's say I'm learning my 2 times table, there'll be certain neurons that are involved in learning the 2 times table, and they will be sending messages back and forth. And eventually, the more I practice, when I make mistakes and I learn from those mistakes, maybe when a teacher helps me master the 2 times table, those pathways, those messages back and forth create neural pathways, and they create connections. And the more I practice, the more hardwired those connections are. If I don't practice much, they'll be very weak. If I stop practicing, those connections kind of break up. Essentially, all learning is like that. It's about the strengthening and weakening of neural connections. So the more we practice, the more effort we put in, the more we learn from our teachers, the more we change our strategies when we face obstacles, we're essentially creating stronger and stronger pathways to help us learn new things. And that's really important to keep in mind when we're learning. And this links to other research by psychologists. So this graph on the left is the classic inverted U-curve by 2 psychologists called Yerkes Dodson. And if we look at the bottom axis, so this is the x-axis across the bottom is our levels of stress, sometimes can be called levels of challenge. And on the y-axis going up is our performance level, sometimes linked to our ability to learn. So when our stress levels are low, or the level of challenge is low, we tend to perform badly. And that's partly because our brains want stimulation and challenge, and if they're not getting it, we get distracted. We're looking for stuff elsewhere to stimulate us. Conversely, if we go to the other end, if the stress level or the challenge level is too high, we perform really badly as well. And that's because we then tip into the kind of fight-flight mode. We become overwhelmed by the task, we become too stressed, and essentially the kind of panic part of our brain kicks in and we can't really think very clearly. So what we're aiming for in the middle is this sweet spot of stress or challenge, which is actually when we experience mild to moderate levels of stress. It's when we tend to perform at our best. It's when we tend to learn the most. So too little challenge, we get bored. Too much challenge, we get overwhelmed. We're aiming for this sweet spot of mild to moderate levels of stress and challenge. It's where neuroplasticity, our brain's ability to form connections, is maximized. Something to note though on this slide is that given what's happening in the world, given the fact that our children are probably being exposed to the news, they might be experiencing higher stress levels than normal. So we have to bear that in mind when we're thinking about maybe the work we're setting as schools and the things we're asking our children and families to do, because they might be at the higher end of that stress level already, okay? And we're trying to get them in that sweet spot of mild to moderate levels of stress. So I'm just going to click on to the next slide. A framework that I really like is this idea of comfort zone, stretch zone, panic zone. This model I borrowed from Professor Tal Ben-Shahar, who's a psychologist, was at Harvard University. Now he's moved on since then, but I've seen this model used by other psychologists and teachers as well. Essentially, the comfort zone is any task or activity where it is completely in our comfort zone. So, for example, if I was to read a picture book to my 4-year-old son, that is in my comfort zone. I know all the words, I can read it comfortably. There is very, very low stress levels in the comfort zone, okay? But you tend not to learn that much in the comfort zone because you're not challenging yourself. Outside of the comfort zone is the stretch zone. So this is where the challenge is just outside of our comfort zone. We haven't mastered it yet. We will make mistakes, which is a key facet of the stretch zone. We're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. We're likely to experience that mild to moderate levels of stress because it's stretching us, it's not panicking us. We tend to learn the most there. We tend to experience flow the most in the stretch zone when we're kind of stretched and challenged. So the stretch zone is a really great place to be. Outside the stretch zone is the panic zone. That's when the challenge, the stress level is far too much, and we go into the panic mode. So something that I think schools need to bear in mind, and families as well, is, learning at the moment has fundamentally changed. Okay, most children around the world are not in their typical classrooms right now with the teacher at the front, with the pupils sat around them. And so learning over these next few weeks has to fundamentally change. And I think that something that could be really good is for schools and teachers to kind of set small challenges, kind of stretch zone challenges, bearing in mind, like I said before, that potentially children might be experiencing slightly higher levels of stress than when they might be in their normal school environment, because they're at home, they're out of their normal routine, and there's a global pandemic going on. It's a recipe for high levels of stress. Essentially, what you do with stretch zone challenges is you set small challenges. Okay, these could be creative challenges. They could be get several boxes in your home and make a robot, something like that. And then gradually you make them more challenging. But that's the important bit. You gradually make them more challenging. So you might put them to the edge of their comfort zone and then into the stretch zone and just gradually make it more challenging. Importantly, this is important for teachers as well as parents at home. You give support, guidance, and reassurance when children start to panic. So if the task is too much for them, you bring it back maybe a few steps, maybe get them back in their comfort zone, and then you start again and gradually try and stretch and challenge them. In terms of growth mindset, it's really important to give process praise the process. So rather than if they achieve something, so rather than saying, well done, you're so clever for having done that, that's just praising the kind of outcome. Praise the process. So praise them for the fact that they are showing real determination. Praise them for the fact that they changed their strategy when their first strategy wasn't working. Praise them for the fact that they were resourceful and they kind of look for other equipment and things to use. So that's called process praise. So I think, even if it was schools getting some of their class to learn, say, a new times table, set that as a challenge, make it fun. Okay, so say, okay, by the end of next week, I'd love everyone to have learned their 3 times table by heart, for example, and then families can work with that as a small challenge. Okay, let's learn from 1 times 3 to 4 times 3 by the end of today. And you practice and you make it fun and you play games with it. And then you gradually make it harder. So that's just an example of stretch zone and challenge and how we can kind of tap into this sense of accomplishment and achievement. The last thing I want to say as well, and it's kind of linked to stretch zone challenges, is about goal setting. This is an important part of accomplishment and achieving, is when we set out goals and then we work towards achieving them. When we achieve them, we feel this great sense of satisfaction, a great sense of mastery and accomplishment. It feels really good to achieve things. So as well as setting small stretch zone challenges, set small goals to achieve. And it can also be big goals. If we're speaking to our children now, okay, right now we're in lockdown, situation isn't great. What do you want to do when you're back at school, say in September or whenever in the future? What is it that you really want to improve at? What is it you really want to get stuck into? Is there a club that you want to sign up to that you haven't signed up to before? Important thing is to make the goals meaningful. So when a meaningless goal is something that isn't relevant to a child. So say you set a goal for a child. I want you to know the 8 times table by in a fortnight's time. If they don't want to do that, it's not meaningful to them. So the next point is important. Give children some autonomy and ownership over the goals. What is it that you'd like to achieve over this next week in relation to your maths? What is it you'd like to achieve in terms of your English and your writing? So it might be that you want to learn how to do your joined up writing. Give them some sense of ownership and autonomy, set small goals, and then importantly, celebrate them when they've achieved them, as well as praising the process, kind of celebrate them. Maybe a little treat if there's any treats in the house. It's okay to give some extrinsic rewards for achieving goals, but yeah, set those little goals and work towards achieving them. So I'm going to move on just for the last 10 minutes or so to the last bit, which is about physical activity. Before I talk about physical activity, though, I'd just like to say the other aspect of Perma Plus, so as well as physical activity, is about good nutrition. I'm not going to be talking about that today because we've got so many people all around the world. Our diets are all kind of completely different, but it's really important that we, as much as we can, stay healthy in terms of the foods that we're eating. So it's about a balanced diet. The temptation right now is just to have as much chocolate as you want and have some treats all the time. But actually, it's really important for our immune system and our bodies and our minds to eat healthily right now. The other aspect of Perma Plus is sleep. Again, it might feel like we're in the kind of summer holidays, we're not going to school, we're out of that normal routine. The temptation might be to let children stay up later, to be on their consoles, their iPads, things like that. It's really important, again, for our immune system and also our mental health to have good quality sleep. And part of that is sticking to your same routines. So your same bath time routines, your same bedtime routines, stories, whatever your routines are for helping your children get to sleep. Try as best as you can to stick to those routines, because actually routines and some kind of, not over scheduling, but some kind of routine helps children feel safe. They know what's coming up, they know what to expect. And sleep is really important for our perspective. And and it's really important for our well-being, our immune system functioning as well. So just wanted to mention those two things. Now I'm going to move on to physical activity, which I think is probably one of the most important things to do to look after our physical and mental health. And that's because studies show that active children, also active adults as well, show higher levels of well-being. Active children, so children that partake regularly in physical activity, are healthier. They have stronger bones, stronger immune system functioning. They're generally more resilient. Good, robust studies show that they have more active brains, and actually fitter children tend to learn better. And also they have better body image. So children feel better about themselves and the way they look, the more physically active they are. I just want to show you a video clip which is designed by the Youth Sports Trust, a big charity in the UK, just because it sums up the science about what happens in children's bodies when they're physically active, because I think it's really important. So Lorenzo, are you okay to cue up that video? Here we go.
Our bodies are more or less the same as those of our forefathers, the hunter-gatherers. Industrial and technological revolutions happened so fast that our bodies haven't been able to catch up. We live in a world where we can spend all day not moving, and this impacts on our emotional and physical well-being. The Department of Health recommends that children do at least 60 minutes of physical activity every day. But well over half of the UK's children aged between 5 and 15 don't achieve this. As well as influence from the family, teachers and schools have a big part to play in helping children to sit less and move more. Helping them to understand that physical activity is the key to a healthy and successful life. Every living thing is made of billions of cells. Inside each cell are little batteries called mitochondria. These are constantly charging up, ready to be used through physical activity. If we are inactive for too long, the mitochondria get overcharged, and this can cause inflammation in the cells. This is thought to be a significant contributor to virtually all long-term conditions. Inflammation can start in children as young as 6, so it is absolutely essential to educate and instill good habits for children to be up and active from an early age. Physical activity releases myokines into every cell of the body. These proteins dampen the inflammation. Exercise does so much good for the body and the brain. It connects more neurons together to increase brain power. And this improves concentration, creativity, and memory. Exercise can even make the brain bigger. The boost of the immune system can last up to 6 hours, so it's important to exercise regularly. An active school environment directly contributes to better behaviour and improved results. But more importantly, it creates children who move around more, who are healthier, happier, better behaved, and more engaged. Active children make strong students.
Okay, apologies if there was a bit of an echo there. I was meant to turn off my microphone. So last 5 minutes from me before we open up to questions. So physical activity, what can we do right now whilst we're not at school, we don't have our PE lessons? Hazel mentioned this. Hazel with her family at home, and what I'm doing at home with my family is logging on to PE with Joe. So Joe Wicks is a fitness coach, and what he's doing is every morning, 9 a.m. UK time, he's doing a YouTube live PE lesson for primary school children. So you can just search for it, PE with Joe. The great thing about these sessions is that they are fun and engaging, so you're likely to experience positive emotions. They're accessible, meaning that Joe kind of demonstrates an activity, but then he also modifies it if it's kind of slightly beyond what you're capable of. So again, you've got that comfort zone, stretch zone is kind of adapting it for you. There's a sense of connection because at its peak last week, there were 850,000 people around the world logged on in one of his sessions. And there were people in the UK, people in Sri Lanka, people in India, Japan, people in South Africa. So literally, you've got this, it links into meaning. You're part of something bigger than just your little fitness activity in your front room. And also you can do it as a family. So like I said, Hazel's doing it with her family, I'm doing it with my family. So you're kind of fostering positive relationships at the same time. So I'd highly recommend doing stuff like physical activity, PE with Joe, because it's just 20 minutes every morning, Monday to Friday, and you can log on from around the world. And also if because of time delays, time difference, he records every session. So even if you can't do it live, the videos are up there for you to do it afterwards. Again, linking it to the Stretch Zone Challenge, the Youth Sports Trust, who shared that video, they have these 60-second challenge cards on their website. So if you Google, the link is on that slide, but Youth Sports Trust 60-second challenges, they've got these physical activity challenges. So the one on the page is how many squat jumps can you perform in 60 seconds? And you can get a gold medal if you do 30 squat jumps in 60 seconds. Silver is 20 squat jumps. Bronze is 10. So you've got that sense of achievement, accomplishment whilst doing physical activity. So they're really good, and there's lots of different activities that you can choose from. And also just be creative. So this picture is my two boys. I've got a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. We're doing physical activity at home. I basically found some old bits of wood in my shed, and I just made this balance beam zigzag through our garden. And they had to balance across the beam, then get to the middle patio. Then there were these stepping stones that they had to hop on. Then they had to kick a football into a goal. Just be creative. Try and incorporate short bursts of regular activity so that children are staying active even when they're stuck at home. If you don't have a garden, it's okay. You can get the cushions off your sofa and create kind of stepping stones where they have to jump from one to the other. Be creative, be imaginative, but get them being active as much as you can, because it's really important that we remain physically active even in a lockdown. If you can get outside safely, because vitamin D that we get from sunlight is also really important for our immune system. There's also really good evidence that shows when we see a natural setting, so trees, grass, the great outdoors, it boosts our immune system, lowers our levels of stress. So nature has a really positive effect on our well-being too. So get outside. And also importantly, be active with your children. So model it, join in with them, have fun, make it engaging. So I've just got 1 minute before I open up to questions. So bringing it back to PERMA, something Hayes and I were saying is, how can we as families, as schools, incorporate more PERMA into your new schedules, your new routines? What can you do to experience several aspects of PERMA at one time? So that physical activity, positive emotions, it's engaging. You do it with other people, you're building relationships. You do it with 850,000 people around the world. There's a sense of meaning, connection. There's a sense of accomplishment at the end because you've done a 20-minute workout and you've massively improve your physical activity. So that's the vitality bit. Plus regular physical activity means you're going to sleep better at night. You know, think about how you can incorporate more PERMA into your everyday activities, build it into your routines. And at the end of every day, just reflect back over your day and just think about PERMA. What have you done to kind of improve those different aspects? If there's something that's lacking, maybe try and work on that for the rest of the week. So that brings me to the end of my webinar in terms of my presentation. We're now going to open it up to questions. So feel free to put questions into the chat box bottom right of your screen, and I will do my best to answer them in the next 10 minutes. Just going to have a drink. There's a lot of talking there. So I think Lorenzo's going to help me. I don't know, are you going to flash them up on the big screen? Oh, here we go. So lots of you asking if we'll be able to see Dr. Hazel Harrison's webinar. Yes, I believe so. I think both part 1 and part 2 after today's session will be put up online, so you can view them both. You can go back to them, take notes. Yeah. Someone's saying, can you suggest how to conduct an online assembly? You could do it one of two ways. You could record it in advance, so you can use something like Zoom or Skype, or just a video recorder on your laptop, and then you can upload it to, say, YouTube. It's very easy to set up a YouTube channel. And you could record it live, or you can do live sessions on, so you could set up a webinar on Zoom or Skype. And it can be, you know, if you ask for messages from different classrooms, different children from your school, you could get, what Tammy Prince, the head teacher, did was to get families to send in pictures of activities that they were doing at home with their children, and then just share them online. So I think Tammy's assemblies were only 10-15 minutes long. It's just that regular checking in, so the children get to see their head teacher again. They get to see some of their classmates sharing their work. Yeah, just really simple ideas. Keep it really simple. Don't get too stressed about the technology side of things, which can be stressful. Try and keep it simple. Learn from, if you Google online assemblies, I'm sure there'll be kind of other examples out there as well. So let's have a look at some other questions. Someone's saying, yep, yoga is very good. Yeah, definitely. There again, if you go onto YouTube, or there's a website called Go Noodle. So if you search Go Noodle, they've got some really good short physical activity sessions. They've got mindfulness sessions. They've got yoga. They've also got really cool music videos where they're teaching children about, say, the water cycle. So Go Noodle is really good. You learn a dance routine whilst learning about the water cycle. So you've got learning and movement there, which is a fantastic way to kind of keep learning and being active as well. So yeah, Go Noodle, Cosmic. Yeah, we've been doing Cosmic Kids. So that's online yoga, and the great thing is they're free. You don't have to subscribe. You don't have to pay any money. In terms of, there was another question. Sorry, just find it. Screen time, reducing children's use of screen time. Yeah, this is a tricky one, and I think Hazel mentioned this in her part 1 session, because screen time at the moment can be a great way for children staying connected with their classmates. So they're physically separated, but you know, if they're messaging each other, if they're sharing jokes, having a laugh, then that can be really good. I guess the key is about getting that balance right, and there is no kind of right or wrong with this. It's about each family knowing what is best for their children, and if it feels like they're spending too much time on their screens, then you need to put some boundaries in around that. But again, you can link it to accomplishment and achievement. So let's say, and the other thing to say about accomplishment and achievement is link it to, say, chores at home. Like my family, we've got this whole list of jobs that we want to do whilst we're in lockdown. All these things that we've been putting off for months and years, we're now trying to do. So that cupboard under the stairs that's a complete mess, we're trying to tidy that as a family. So we get everything out, and the boys help put the bags away, and the coats are tidied away, things like that. What you could do is link screen time use to accomplishment. So you might say, right, I'll give you 30 minutes of screen time if you can help me tidy the kitchen or mop the kitchen floor. So they get that sense of accomplishment, they've achieved a job, and then they get the kind of reward at the end. So that can be a way of, tying screen time use and having boundaries around it. So you're just going to have 30 minutes, say before lunch, and you link it to them either completing a piece of work or helping with a chore at home. So yeah, that's one way maybe of regulating it. Let's have a look at a few more. Someone asking about senior school. Potentially we're going to be doing another seminar aimed at older children, but this one's specifically focused on primary age children. How can you keep, so Rebecca Birch, how can you keep a sense of whole class togetherness when communicating with the children separately? It could be that, let's say you're communicating with children separately, let's say you're making phone calls home or things like that. It could be that you ask them, do you have a message for any of your classmates that you'd like me to share? So although you're communicating with Jenny one-to-one, Jenny says, oh, can you tell Hazel that I really miss her and that, I loved her TikTok video or something like that. And then the teacher calls Jenny and passes on that message. So you've got that sense of connection and togetherness, even though you're communicating just one-on-one with each other. And also, I just think images, as long as they're appropriate and you're kind of following your school's like e-safety guidelines and stuff, children feel connected when they physically see their classmates. So if you've got pictures that families are happy to kind of for the schools to share on their website or things like that, then that's a great way of kind of seeing your classmates and kind of smiling and experiencing those positive emotions and that sense of connection as well. So maybe one more question. What other activities can be done with children apart from writing a gratitude letter? Like I said, it could be gratitude text message, gratitude email, a gratitude. You can use WhatsApp video message. You can, call a grandparent. Like, I think it's really important right now to stay connected with elderly people and grandparents, particularly because they're more vulnerable and they are the ones being advised to stay indoors and not go out at all. My parents, who actually live near me, but we can't physically see them right now, every day I'm recording a video of my two boys and I'm sending it to them. So they get to see their grandchildren still, they get to see them laughing, running, jumping, playing, and they feel connected and they're seeing them still. My mum messaged me back saying, oh my goodness, they've grown so much in just a week or two that they haven't seen them. And it's nice for them to still feel like they're part of their lives, even though they're physically distant. So I don't actually like the term social distancing. It's actually just physical distancing. We're physically apart, but we can still remain socially connected. So just mindful of time, I'm just going to go back to the slides, just the last couple of slides. If you'd like to find out more from me, my website is at the top, teachhappy.co.uk. I have a blog on that website where I write about various things related to well-being. There's also a resources and downloads page on my website where there are free things to download. You can download a chapter from my book, and I've written a chapter in another book that you can download, which is about promoting mental health in primary schools. On Twitter, you can find me at Adrian Bethune. And the book that I wrote is called Wellbeing in the Primary Classroom. Search online, you can find it there. And just to say thank you for attending this webinar. For further support from Oxford, you can scan that QR code from your phone or visit the link provided on the chat box. And then finally, we value your feedback. So please scan that QR code with your phone or visit that link and just or the link in the chat box and just let us know what you felt about the session. Is there anything we can improve? Is there anything you'd like to be added next time or something that we could get rid of? But yeah, we're keen to keep this improving and as useful as possible. So just let us know what you thought. So yeah, thank you very much for attending. It's been great to have, I think there were at its peak of good 500 plus people, so that's amazing. Yeah, look after yourselves, look after each other, and just remember PERMA. Thank you very much. Goodbye.